How's it going, everyone? At Global Hack Week, once again, it is Rosendo from MLH. So happy to see everyone here. If you're in chat, let us know where you're joining from. Let us know what you've enjoyed so far about Global Hack Week. We'd love to hear from you. Just to kick things off, you can register and check in at the link below. I'm going to be dropping that in chat for y'all as well, so you can just click right into it. Make sure you register and check in so you can get credit for being here. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like things are really getting heated up here at Global Hack Week. This is going to be another great session. Hope you're enjoying learning about AIML. We've got something a little bit different this time around. It's going to be learning how to build an application using an AI coding assistant. I think, like the person I have joining us today, Marina, is going to be a little bit more qualified to speak on it. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring her up to the stage. Please give a warm welcome to Marina Skosh.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the intro,
No
Rosendo.
worries.
So let's get started. If we can get my screen up on stage as well. There we go. So yeah, today I'm here to talk about TinyMCE, but also I'm here to talk about building an newsletter email editor, a full stack like front end application with AI. And we're going to use a few technologies: Tiny, Angular, Windsurf, as well as OpenAI. So before we get started, I'm going to ask Rosendo to post the link to the slides on this chat over here and on the banner and below, so that you have a link to the slides. Feel free to click on it and follow along on your own. And that way, I don't have to sort of direct you. And if you want to skip ahead, you can. All right. Before we get started, who am I? I'm Rina. I started my career off as a developer and then moved into developer ecosystem, developer relations, and now in DevRel and marketing. I currently work at TinyMCE, which is a rich text component used by over 1.5 million developers worldwide in millions of applications. And a fun fact about me, if you didn't care about like my experience, is that I love to travel, and I've visited over 30 plus countries. And if you would like to talk to me about travel, coding, AI, ML, or TinyMCE, feel free to follow me at Marina Sagosh in all of these socials, or one of these socials as you like. I've attached a cute llama or alpaca actually for you to enjoy, as well as a picture of Machu Picchu from one of my recent trips. Sweet. All right. I'm going to. All right, today's agenda. I'm going to start this a little differently than I usually do with some of these talks, because I'm going to get to the meat of this, which is AI, ML. What are we talking about? And why coding with AI is something you as a developer should be aware of, and just Gen AI tools in general. Okay. So before I get started, I would like to understand, feel free to drop some comments in the chat. Where are most people on the scale? Right? Um, or have you never heard of Gen AI? Hopefully not, because you're in this talk. Heard of Gen AI, but don't really trust it, or you have fun with it and you're not really sure as a developer or as a user how to get value out of it, or some of you are just AI ninjas. So keep dropping in the chat who you are, where you're coming from, and I would love to learn a little bit more as I'm continuing this talk. So just so that I can also cater it a little bit more to you, based on where you are in the spectrum. This is a wonderful spectrum just to get a sense of where most people are. If I really had to take a guess, I would guess most people are probably in number 3, where they have fun with Gen AI. Yeah, like somewhere between 3 and 4, like the chat I just got Jordanos to say, where a lot of people have fun with it and they know and they start using AI, but sometimes they just don't know how to get value out of it. All right. So, what is generative AI? You take existing content and you output human-like content out of it. There's different ways to do it with music, videos, images, text, and of course, I use generative AI to give you that explanation. The irony of it all. So, but what I really want to focus on today is, I'm not here to tell you what ChatGPT is or Claude AI is. What I'm here to tell you is kind of like this transition. We've seen ChatGPT had this boom, and Anthropic and Claude AI had this boom. Then it transferred into like Notion and Copy AI and Jasper and now Windsurf and these code editors, that it's kind of insane how this growth has gone into all different applications into all different touch points. Like almost every other SaaS application has AI in it. And what I'm here to talk about today is AI in coding, right? Coding via iterative prompts, as we call it, and refinement. And really, what this means is at the end of the day, if we sort of go back to the slide, we're just using large language models as our first point of contact when it comes to solving coding challenges. So instead of going to Google search for how to do XYZ, you would just chat GPT or Claude this type of coding. And this has become really popular over the last couple of months, I would say specifically, and maybe even year, especially since I would say the release of GPT 4.0 and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, right? These are state of the art LLMs, foundational LLMs, and they've really reached a new level of understanding and a new level of capability where coding via iterative prompt refinement becomes a real reality, if for lack of a better word, right, as opposed to a dream. And when it comes to programming with AI, this is an evolving paradigm, right? We've always been headed this way, in my opinion. And it's not just something that just came out of the blue. All right, it took us some time to get here. So before coding with AI, and I might date a lot of you on this workshop, we actually, and I think I'm at the generation that made this cutoff. We actually used books. We used physical books to learn how to program. People used to look at that for references. I used to go there and look at the pseudocode and try to see if I can replicate it. It was great. Design patterns was something I used constantly. That was my first C programming language book. And the first time I learned about AI was in my professor Peter Norvig's class when he, published this book and when we talked about it, right? So that's great. But, we've always been trying to make programming better. Maybe not all applications have been trying to do this of AI, but coding definitely. We've been trying to get easier and trying to research faster. So then came Google. Google came on the scene, and we've been able to search really powerful things on Google and write a lot of code snippets, and there's a lot of blogging that happened, and it became sort of the standard way of solving coding challenges. So then you started, instead of books, using Google as your first point of contact when you're trying to find relevant content to solve your coding problems. And then a couple of years later, we had Stack Overflow come on the scene, and we had some leverage because we solved programming challenges as a community, right? And we still did some things. We still referenced books. We probably still used Google a lot, but these methods started becoming really, really good with Stack Overflow. And each of these at its time were the standard of programming, and kind of like that pinnacle of how you did programming at that time. So if you've been programming for 10, which is about where I'm at, 10 to 15 years, or even 20 years, you really know that the real problem that you're trying to find in coding, it's not creating a new React app or creating a new Angular application. The real problem that you're trying to solve is finding an exact problem to your finding exact solution to your exact problem. And there's been so many times where I've actually needed to solve a database related problem or need to solve a caching problem. And I used to do something like stream Stack Overflow or Google or look it up in a book, right? And this takes a ton of reading and like of understanding what the problem was and the solution, then applying it back. And, just doing that is a lot. And I think the paradigm has really changed where we have started solving programming with AI. We're relying on AI or LLMs to provide these tailored solutions, specific answers, quick responses. And this is really kind of the basis of how programming with AI first. Instead of first having to go to Stack Overflow or Google or having to use an external resource, we just ask an LLM and you're provided with a specific code, and it is going to give you a very tailored solution for a very tailored answer by looking at your code with the context of your code and looking at what you're trying to solve, right? And these days it does it really, really well. You're going to see that I'm not even going to try to do a lot of the more complex code, as people would call it. Like I'd be debugging, I use it as a pair programmer in the upcoming demo, but I'm really not going to try to touch the actual functionalities and things like that outside of like testing it. So yeah, so let's kind of move on to why this is happening. And this is happening because of this new thing called AI agents. And you might have heard this buzz. I've put a few quotes out there that are trending on all of these different social media outlets. And this new thing is called agents. Agents are the new apps, and uh we'll have like a billion agents out there. We'll have more agents than the number of humans out there. So some really big claims. And what is this? Well, before I start on what it is, I want to show you about like what these agents are capable of. So this kind of workshop, this setup for the workshop, actually gave this talk at Vue.js Nation 2 weeks ago, and a lot has changed in 2 weeks, right? Within a week, SourceGraph launched Cody. SourceGraph has Cody, which is another AI assistant, launched enterprise AI coding agents. And literally just yesterday, I had to update the slide, believe it or not. I just had SourceGraph and Cursor 2.0. GitHub Copilot also announced agent mode. And of course, there's Cursor 2.0 and what we're going to be exploring Windsurf today. There's a lot of AI agents out there, right? Too many to just put on the screen and let you know about how to code. These are so probably like my four favorite coding assistants if I had to pick a few. But yeah, so that's kind of the big news. It changes every day. AI agents is kind of like the new SaaS of probably our next generation, right? The amount we're going to be working on SaaS applications is going to continue to increase, but so are the amount we're going to start working on agents. So it's a really interesting space that I would start paying attention to, especially if I am in the AI and ML space or AI and ML adjacent space, which is kind of where I sit. So what are agents? What is this buzzword? So agents are this new app, and I honestly do expect that someday we'll have billions of agents. And I do think we're going to live in a world where they are going to be a lot of different types of agents for different tasks. And I don't want to give you sort of a very like fluff explanation of it combines the power of, this implementation. But what I really want to do is like give you a very simple implementation of what an agent is. So think of an agent as a genius with a million ideas. And the agent is the one who actually like gets stuff done. So you have AI, which has a million ideas, and the agent that gets stuff done. And while AI is all about like raw brain power and it has a lot of perfect potential, so think of it as like ChatGPT, the agent is like the practical hands-on version. It's like giving that genius a specific task and saying, okay, now go do something with all of this brain power. And the AI agent takes the intelligence of AI and turns it into action. All right, so what does this mean? Well, it does this by doing three or four very interesting things, right? When I say turn it into action, it can answer your questions like automating work or handling your to-do list. It literally can be the difference between knowing how to do something and actually doing it. So while AI I think is the well, AI is the brains of this operation, the AI agent itself is the one rolling up its sleeves and making things happen, right? So the few things about agents that you need to be aware of, uh, is that agents, there's a few ways in which we interact with agents, right? Yes, we have a workflow and we have all of these things. The two things that you interact with agents are an interface and a workflow. So if you think about an interface, you can have this chatbot type thing going on in the background, but there are flows prescribed for this agent to get this task accomplished. So it doesn't automatically sometimes get all of the tasks done. It can follow a specific flow to get to your specific request. And that's kind of exactly how they're trained. So if you see this sort of image over here, this is a screenshot of Cascade. And this is an exact screenshot of the interface that you use to communicate with the agent for Windsurf, which is Cascade. And they actually published this publicly. It's on their website. And I took this from their website where they have a workflow. So it's an agent, there's a co pilot, and the flow is if the user asks a question, it goes and does its research, it identifies all the context, it makes a suggestion, and then it waits for the user to either accept or reject. And based on if they accept or reject, so for example, the dev accepted this response, then they will continue doing what they were doing and maybe suggest more things to finally get to the solution where you need to get to. So it is a very like workflow type experience where you do need to follow a series of steps or nodes in a workflow. And these nodes really can involve accessing an information from a database, decision making, performing a task, emailing. Every agent is very different, but the fundamentals of an agent is there needs to be an interface, there is a workflow, and it has to get a prescribed set of tasks done. And that really is what an agent is. All right. So, how does this tie back into what we're talking about today, which is programming, right? Coding with an AI assistant or coding with this agentic workflow. Well, there's only one step that honestly is the hardest step in sometimes coding that agents really start taking care of, and sometimes a pain point, which is the research part. So, we still, I believe, every developer should still focus on understanding the issue that they're having, especially if you're fixing a bug. And yes, we should still be trying to write and test code, but having to research, having to find out why this problem is there, maybe asking someone like that conversation, that pair programming part, that's what the agent is taking care of. So you still do have to write a decent amount of code where agents stand today. And you still do have to like review the shipment of the code and review all your deploys and make sure your DevOps processes are in sync. While there's a lot of agents, even for GitHub reviews and all of that, I would still highly encourage that we have checks, human checks at each of these steps. And I'm sure we'll go towards a world where we get more hands off and hands off. But right now, the current state of it as of February 7th, 2025, is that the research element is the big thing that this agent really is taking care of for me. All right. So today's demo. What are we talking about? What is TinyMCE? How many of you have heard of TinyMCE before? It's a very simple component, which is why it makes it a great sort of demo purpose. Please feel free to answer in the chat, actually. So TinyMCE is a JavaScript-based rich text editor component. It is that little tiny box, pun not intended, over there. And you've probably, if you've ever typed a piece of text on the internet, you've most likely used TinyMCE. So today we're going to use a cloud-hosted solution of TinyMCE in an Angular application. And I already have the starter code set up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and ask our friend Rosendo to sort of send that starter code link. And what we're really building, if you go to the main branch, you can actually pull this up and get the whole functionality working, right? My goal today is not to teach you how to build TinyMCE. I think that we're very proud of ourselves that it's very straightforward to do that. My goal is to show you how to code with AI to be able to use TinyMCE. So here, this is the application we're building. Specifically, we're going to be editing and changing that part of the application to look more like that. And I'm also, because this is an email newsletter, I also have this kind of built-in get inline CSS functionality that we are going to be taking a look at today. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So I have this application set up. So if you clone your application and you actually go to your main branch, I'm going to close the solution here. You're actually going to see this app set up. I hope everyone can still see my screen pretty clearly. Happy to zoom in. And your workspace, when you're coding today with an AI agent, especially in an AI code editor, is going to look something like this, right? You can see some of the past conversations I've had. This is it's almost like a chat GPT within my code editor, is somehow someone described it at a previous workshop I did. And then we have this sort of fold file structure, very similar. This looks exactly like Visual Studio Code to me. And then what we have is our Angular app. I, set up the Angular app for you already. I used this package.json file. I've already brought in TinyMCE Angular. If you want to learn more on how to set up TinyMCE with an Angular application, definitely go to our documentation and please get started. And then finally, one more thing before we start, I do need you all to go get your own TinyMCE API key as well as OpenAI API key. So in order to make this app fully functioning, I would at least need you to have a TinyMCE API key. I will ask Rosendo to post the code for sign up for that. You get a 14-day free trial, so feel free to play around with it. And there's also a lot of free plugins right out of the box. So feel free to use the TinyMCE API key, sign up for an account, and you'll get a free key. Post it. You're going to have to create an environment.localhost.ts file to run this application. And then you're going to have to add TinyMCE's API key over here, which is what I've done in my own environment localhost file. I'm doing this just so that we can prevent me showing my own personal API key and just good practices overall while coding and pushing to GitHub so that we don't expose API keys. All right, sweet. I hope everyone is set up and has an understanding of where this code base is, where this application sort of lives. It's a very simple structure. We have an app component compiled with or coupled with an HTML, of course, and some routes set up, which is empty, and also some CSS that I've already gone ahead and set up. All right, so I'm not going to use AI in the start. So I'm assuming I'm a experienced programmer here. Oops. Cool. I'm assuming I'm an experienced programmer here, and I'm actually going to just say npm start, right? And the way why I know it's npm start, if I were you and starting out, I would do npmi before npm start, and it would set up my configuration with development. Sweet. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Just going to build my application, and let's see over here. Oops. Here. Sweet. This should be the fully functioning editor. This is what we want to build. I'm just trying to show everyone that you can do this. What I'm going to encourage everyone, if you want to follow along to see like how I'm making all of these changes, is actually to switch over to the TinyMCE-text area branch. So let's start at this branch, right? So let's imagine we have actually not built out that application. I've got directive from my product manager that he wants the product to look something like this. And I have, some specs and I know what to do, right? Cool. But maybe I'm a developer has experience with TinyMCE, but I've really not, have too much experience with it. So the first step is I'm going to identify a few things that's going to help me get started. I can see that the accessibility, spell checker, source code, all of these plugins are already in there. And what I really want to do is understand how the spec is asking me to sort of format all of these groups together under this sort of single formatting toolbar. So what I'm going to tell Windsurf AI, actually, let me close this so you guys have a better view of this. I'm going to go ahead and I know this change needs to happen in app component. I'm going to open that up. You don't have to open that up, but it always helps to know what changes are going on. I'm going to zoom out just for a second. Let me know if it's too small and I'm happy to zoom back in. And I'm going to say, I would like the toolbar in TinyMCE to have formatting group for, and let's select a few of them for maybe all of these, right? All of this formatting stuff for all of these toolbar config options. So let's say I know the basics and I'm going to say, hey, I need to have a formatting group for this within the toolbar. And I'm not going to tell it anything about TinyMCE. I've not loaded, there's no memory, just to prove that there's no memory. You can look at it. I've not loaded any memories, right? And I'm simply going to say at web. I'm using Claude 3.5 Sonnet in case anyone was curious how I'm doing this. I'm going to hit enter. And let's see what it comes up with. So it actually took my problem. Like, let's walk through the workflow. It understood that I needed a formatting group. And then it said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to do that for you. I am going to say formatting group, add format, all of these go in formatting. And that's it. It said the toolbar option. And I think I can go over here and see that it did that very quickly. Now my toolbar looks a lot less clunky and it's a lot closer to how, you know, the PM had prescribed this for us. Sweet. Let's accept that. And what I'm going to do, and you can see this is a truly agentic workflow. Like, you have just described your problem. You as a developer know exactly what the changes need to be. You understand the problem, and you actually have a vision of what the solution is. And you're asking the agent to do this. The add web configuration that I added, which is a great question, is basically allowing this agent to go when it's doing the research, go to the the internet and search the internet for specifically TinyMCE documentation and understand from the docs what it needs to do in order to have a formatting group, right? How to install the software. This is Windsurf Code Editor, which you can actually go to Codium, Codeium, and install a Windsurf Code Editor from there. Great questions. All right. And so I've done the first step. I, as a developer, I kind of have gotten really close. And then I see that there's some of these buttons, right? I probably know that there's an AI assistant. There's a merge tags. There's also like inline CSS that I want functioning. So let us get started with some of the simple things. So I already have my code editor's inline CSS function set up by maybe, let's say, a colleague. And they basically get content from TinyMCE and they've set up a value. But I noticed that inline CSS isn't added. So I'm going to say I need the TinyMCE editor to have inline CSS plugin enabled. That's all I'm going to say. Actually, I didn't even do .web, and I'm going to try to see. This is a test that I'm doing right now, which interesting to do it live. But hey, it's a because it's pulled so much from the documentation already, I assumed that it would have pulled enough docs to have all of the plugins. And I wouldn't suggest doing this every time, but if you know that it's going to be a small change, just go ahead and say that, it's kind of like you're a peer reviewer almost, and you're like, yeah, that looks good to me. That is what inline CSS does. So you can save that. Let's go to our editor. Let's refresh the page. And, let's sort of think about what we can paste into this. So let me see. Give me a second. I actually had some content set up for us. Oops. Right. Again, this is not about me trying to teach you how to code. I'm going to open up this code editor. As you can see, TinyMCE has an advanced code editor where you can actually change it from dark and light mode, do all of the fun stuff, format code, all of that. I'm going to go ahead and say that's what I wanted to display. Cool. So if you look at this code editor itself, there's a few styles, there's a few things in the background. But typically, when you just do tinymce.get content without inline CSS, so I'm going to go ahead. So when I get it with inline CSS, I actually, if you look at the code, it's basically the same. It actually gives me all of the HTML as well as all of the styling within the HTML. It's incredible, like, to see how much you can get out of this. And this is really important. Like, why am I talking about CSS and this functionality? Well, if you're building a newsletter editor like so, you are most likely going to want a inline CSS so that when you do send it over email, you are sending it without with the CSS. Because imagine, just take a second and imagine this, for example, not having this background color, right? Here we go. Oops. It looks pretty bad, doesn't it? So having the background color actually does make a difference. So you don't want your end recipient to not have CSS styles as part of their templates. So it makes sense as a product requirement to have this inline CSS, and you were able to do that all in just a minute. All right, let's think about the next thing that we need to add. I see some of these. So if I look back at my code, I think I have a few more plugins missing. I have something that looks like that, which I know is templates and merge tags, and I also have like an AI assistant. Really cool. So I'm gonna keep the AI assistant for the last. Using AI to implement AI is a great irony that I love. And in let's see, yeah, in the respect for time, what I'm going to first do is ask it to add merge tags as an option, right? So in order to add merge tags as an option, what I'm going to do is ask our agent over here to say, I would like to add, oops, I would like to add merge tags to the TinyMCE configuration. And let's see, and maybe you had some specific product requirements. So you had like the groups for the list to be contact, sender, and maybe some information about the subscription uh, itself. Sweet. And I'm going to say, feel free to look up the web. This is slightly a little bit more complicated plugin. And let's take a look. All right, so it's searching tiny.cloud. It looked at the right documents, right? It's doing all the work that you as a developer would have had to do, that research work. And then it's creating an outline, it's analyzing some content, and then it's going back to my app and saying, okay, the first thing I would do is I would add merge tags. Great. But, and then what it's going to do is it adds merge tags to your plugins, it adds merge tags to your toolbar, and then, it added a few more things: contact, first name, sender, subscription plan, all of that. So you can feel free to edit these things based on how you would like it to be. So now I'm a developer, right? I'm going to close this for a second. I'm going to show you the workflow of what I would do, right? I would look at what my requirements are. And in my requirement document, I know merge tag actually comes after sort of this alignment option, which is aligned over here. So I actually don't want merge tags to live here. So while I like this change that they've suggested, I am actually going to ask the merge tags to live over here. So I can pair program. This is an AI assistant saying, here's my recommendation. And you can say, yeah, but based on my recs, this is where I need merge tags to live. All right. Once I have that, I can also go down here and I can say, okay, I have the basic list of what I want. I wanted a contact name, wanted the sender email, sender name, all of that. But under subscription, we're a newsletter. So maybe what I really want is a subscription unsubscribe. Oops. Link. Oops. Link. And I would call this just unsubscribe link. And that way you can start templatizing these kind of things, right? Let's also think about what else can I want from subscription, like preferences. Maybe you don't want unsubscribe preferences, but you want a standard way for people to use your different newsletters. So we'll just go ahead and call this subscription preferences. So you've noticed like it does the basics that Copilot does, the whole autocomplete and all of that as I'm typing. Don't really need the start and end date. I think all of this looks good to me. So I'm going to save it and then I'm going to say accept all changes. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my ARC editor. And I quickly see that I have a merge tag option where, I can put in unsubscribe link, I can put in a first name, and these are just reusable text fields that, a lot of email editors out there really like. Now, let's take this one step further. The next thing that we saw was templates. So I am going to go ahead and add templates to the scene. And in this case, the workflow doesn't always have to be agentic, right? It can be a combination of what we know to be true and what, you know, actually the AI is recommending. So it always requires today a delicate balance of asking the AI assistant, following the research problem of like, I need to solve this specific task, and then solving it. All right. So in order to add templates, I know that looking at the documentation, I can solve this problem on my own. And then I'm going to add a specific tag over here because I remember seeing the insert template over here. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to actually find my list of preset templates um, and copy it in over here. So I've been provided this guidance already from my product team. As you can see, this is the merge tag list, and I'm just going to go ahead and add my template list to that. Sweet. So I've been provided with a newsletter intro, all of that, and I can quickly see that, let's see, let's refresh, and I can quickly see all of my templates are right here within the editor. All right, this is great. I love this. You can insert. It's very templatized. The fonts work great. All of that. All right, I'm getting closer and closer to what we really want to build. The two things that are left is sort of building out this layout and formatting. Where, if you notice, this highlight, even in the previous slide, you're only editing this part of the component, right? Right now, I can edit wherever I want. Type a piece of text. But this is not true. I don't want the entire root to be editable because let's take a look. There's different types of email editors. So if you look at a Gmail let's see. If you look at something like this, inserting something in Gmail, you can insert a newsletter in Gmail, but you also have this wider text area to type piece of text. I've looked at Zettle, where you can type very specific areas. And let's also look at HubSpot. HubSpot actually uses TinyMCE, and they have a very similar layout over here. They of course configured it to match the look and feel of their website, but you can't type anywhere outside of these specific area or content. That in TinyMCE, I'm aware, is called multi-root editing. And that I know is something my product manager wants me to implement. And how am I going to do that, right? So, what I'm going to do is the first step is to make sure that my core, the fundamental thing is the core editor itself. Editor root. All right. The core editor itself has, a false sort of editable thing. And then I'm going to, and when you say editor root is false, you can actually not type, or hold on, let me refresh this. Yeah, see, now I cannot type. I just needed a second. I can't really type anywhere over here. And that is a real, like, interesting struggle that we have. And then once we get this editor root set up to false, what you can also do is I'm going to set up the specific editable class. So I'm going to define regions with my CSS saying things are going to be called tiny editable. And I would like that to happen. All right, sweet. I've done all of this, and what I realized is that my editor content is empty right now, right? Which means the actual content that I'm feeding into my editor over here completely empty. What I need to do here is be able to test this sort of editable multi-root functionality out, which means specifying which places are editable and non-editable. In order to do that, I am going to go back here and I see that this is still empty. So come back to my windsurf editor and actually just ask the AI because I want some example. And I'm going to say, uh, can you set the editor content to a newsletter like style with table and classes that specify what the editable region is, which is tiny editable. All right, I've given it a pretty long, complex thing. And I'm just going to ask it to create an example for me because, I need to test my application out. So we're kind of in the third and fourth phase. And let's see how it updates my editor content. So it knows I need to update editor content. I did tell it that, but let's see if it's able to come up with something. All right, sweet. This looks right to me. There's a table, there's some divs, and there's a very nice looking newsletter. Cool. I can go ahead and accept it. Maybe we can say, I actually want the newsletter to talk all about AI and I want the colors to pop. I really wonder, change editor content to reflect this. Right. I'm going to experiment a little bit more. I'm happy with this, but it's only playing around with my brand colors and I want to make sure that this application that I'm building actually, pops. And so what it's going to do is it's actually going to search up modern AI technology, color vibrant and futuristics in the internet. It's going to go through a lot of content and try to understand where it needs to update. And then it's going to use a cybernetic, I'm not even told it, right? It used the word pop that I gave it to be able to sort of build out this entire thing. So let's give it a few more seconds. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a look at what it did. Ooh, look at that. That definitely pops. All the colors, there's some bright green, bright. And I did not do anything, right? I haven't been coding this entire time. To get a full sense of how this looks like, I'm going to go ahead and accept all of these changes. And I'm going to go ahead and change the height to something like that. All right. Sweet. So now you can see the entire newsletter editor. It looks, it's starting to look a lot like what we see on the HubSpot page, right? Where you can select very specific pieces of content. Oh, I see that something is broken here. Okay, I'm going to go back here and try to figure out that my editable region is actually not working. So let's see. Formatting. And let's see if we've actually set up some editable classes over here. Div class, tiny editable, root false. Okay. And let's see. Let's set up to why is the root? Let's debug. I actually planned this. Why is the root still editable? At web and help me make this multi-root editing in TinyMCE with editable regions only being the editable class. All right. So I'm going to ask it, why is the root still editable? And help you make this multi-root editing in TinyMCE with editable regions only being the editable class. All right. Lot of words for it, lot of editables. Let's see if it's able to figure it out. Again, it's not going to be perfect all the time. I do have to warn people of that, but it's getting a lot closer, right? It's still doing the exact same research, the exact same places that I would go. It's understanding why the root is still editable. And there it is. I accidentally typed editor root. So it changed it to editable root equals false. Look at that. It helped me debug that. I don't think I need a non-editable thing, so I don't know where that suggestion came up from. So I'm gonna, for now, reject that suggestion because I do know the thing better. And I'm gonna save it and go over here, refresh. And as you can see, I can't click some parts, but I can make changes to some parts. So we do have a non-editable root and now an editable root. So live to you, I've been able to not only add a bunch of plugins to the site, create an entire newsletter editor, as well as add something that looks a lot like this. Finally, one thing I did notice that someone pointed out, the status bar is still there. I am going to go ahead, of course, and change it. Thank you for pointing that out, to say that the status bar should be false. And that's all you have to do in order to get rid of that. Good catch. All right, so now it's starting to look a lot more and more like what I have in terms of my specs. The only things that I'm really missing is the AI assistant. So I'm going to say, given the code I have and the API key for OpenAI in my environment variable, because I do know that I brought in my environment variable over here. Um, and that's where my TinyMCE API key is. And as I said, that's where the OpenAI API key is also going to be living. So given the code that I have and the API key for OpenAI in my environment variable, I'm going to ask it to please add AI plugin to TinyMCE with the OpenAI streaming configuration, since that's what my requirements say. Um, Also, yeah. All right. I might have to change some code up. I also, again, it's hit or miss with these AI agents, but so far so good. It helped me debug. It's helped me code, and so far I've written very minimal code in my opinion, for what a software engineer would have been doing in this traditional workflow, and it saved a ton of time because this would, back in the day when I was coding and senior software engineer, this would have been like a huge 8-point story. And these days, even story points can be reevaluated if you're coding with AI, which is really incredible to think about. All right, let's take a look at this. There are some things. So let's take a look at it. It first added AI. It did not add anything to the toolbar. It added AI ask and AI suggest, which is actually incorrect. So I am going to go ahead and edit that because, again, as a human user, I know that that's incorrect. I also know that that's not where I want that change to be. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I believe the change was right before. So I'm going to say AI dialogue and AI shortcuts. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then one final thing, I am probably going to look at this AI assistant and realize that we need to. So I'm going to go ahead and first accept these changes. And then I think it's TypeScript. I know as a developer that this is TypeScript. All right, so just start to specify the type of what's going to come in. I'm going to, so far, set it as any. Looks decent to me. We're, pinging OpenAI's chat completions. And let's take a look at if it works just for the sake of time. All right, so I, as a developer, pair programmed with this AI assistant. It didn't get everything right. But it did get the meat of the functionality, which is being done on the client side, which is pinging the actual API. Think mostly right. So let's see if we can do something about it. So I'm going to use my AI shortcuts. I'm going to ask it to expand around. Oops, respond with was not used. All right. Looks like it didn't get the functionality completely correct. Um, let's see. I am actually going to go ahead and what I'm going to do. Let's try to debug this. Um, it looks like respond with was not used at web. I know what the solution is, but I don't want to type it in until let's do one last experiment before I open it up for questions. I think I have 4 more minutes, so sweet. It's gonna go through it. It's opening up the OpenAI Chat GPT integration guide, which is exactly where I want to go. Um, it's understanding that it needs to do some things to change it, which is ideal. All right. So let's go ahead and accept. Oops. Yeah. Looks like our AI is probably not working right now. Okay, sweet. So, as you can tell, sometimes when it is a sort of complicated enough response, it doesn't know how to handle it. So, what I'm actually going to do, so this is not how I would write this code, right? I would actually say something like this.ai dust. And I would actually move this because I want to keep my configuration separate from the rest of these things. So I'd actually move this implementation to before my configuration. And I would do something like this. Oops. Give me a second. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. All right. So I would respond. I have my implementation over here. Actually going to go ahead and paste my response over here. There we go. This is what I would do. I'd pull out the functionality that it prescribed over here just so that I don't have any complications. I would use the respond with stream as prescribed, and that's exactly how I would implement this. Now let's see if my code works. Right, improve writing, it's thinking, and there we go. We have a fully functioning AI assistant. Now, I don't think AI is, transformative in the sense that it clearly can't build everything from scratch, but it can get me almost up to the very last button and get something looking exactly as what my product manager described. I did it in probably like what 20, 30 minutes, something that would have taken me a few hours, if not like a day, right? To completely implement on my own. So it's lovely to have this sort of in-house pair programmer. And if you want to check out more, the link is in the slides. You can go ahead and look at our Angular Quick Start, our documentation, the starter code, and how I built this up, as well as all of the other features that I used if you're interested in sort of using this in your own applications. All right. And I recognize that this challenge, the workshop, runs all the way until I believe February 13th. On February 12th, I actually have a workshop at 9 a.m. So if you love this workshop, feel free to join me there. I'm not going to be using Windsurf. I'm actually going to be using Cursor, which is a competitor. So a different AI interface, similar sort of lecture at the start, but I'm also going to be maybe playing around with one or two AI APIs, probably playing around with DeepSeek, trying to see if I can set up a local implementation, connecting that to Laravel as well as OpenAI. So I hope to see you all there. And questions. Do you guys have any questions? Let's
Hi, Marina.
see. Hi.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in here and taking a look at the chat. It doesn't look like there were many questions like regarding TinyMCE specifically. We did have some questions that you answered like throughout the presentation, though. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Sweet. If you have any other questions or any other, you know, suggestions, I'd love to hear that. And if you're playing around with AI, especially those folks who are at four and the AI ninjas out there, would love to collaborate and learn some more. It's always great to, it's hard to keep up with AI individually, and the only way to do it is collectively. So I hope you all have a wonderful day and happy coding.
Awesome. Yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to Marina here for joining us and explaining the intricacies of setting up an AI co-pilot, I guess, with TinyMCE. Very interesting stuff. As she mentioned earlier, if you've typed any type of text into the internet, you've probably used TinyMCE in the past. So if you weren't aware of it beforehand, definitely something that you should get more familiar with. And if you want to do that, you can actually check out all of the challenges TinyMCE has to offer during Global Hack Week AIML. Just go to the link that I've dropped in the chat there. You can see all of the challenges. And if you need any help or explanations with things, have any questions throughout the week, not only can you ask during the next workshop that's going to be on the 12th at 9 a.m., as we mentioned, ET, but you can also drop any questions you have into the Discord channel. Our server is discord.mlh.io, and the channel is going to be Ask TinyMCE. So, yeah, I mean, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time here. Such a great session. And yeah, I mean, until the next time, really looking forward to seeing what the next workshop kind of entails as well.
Thank you.
All right, folks, have a good one.